I need your help. I don't have much time. Did you do that?
Hello, we are Rachel, Mai, and Tim, and welcome to our vlog on the episodic action-adventure game Republique. Filled with sneaking and pickpocketing, Republique creates an era of rebellion in which the player becomes a tool against the utilitarian government running main character Hope's life. Republique is a 5-episode ported game which was originally released on iOS and Android on December 19, 2013. Following the release of the 3rd episode on October 20th, 2014, Republique was ported to PC and Mac on February 26, 2015, and finally it arrived to PlayStation 4 on March 22, 2016. Creator and designer of Republique, Ryan Payton, began his career with Kojima Studios, located in Japan, remaining with them until he finished work on Metal Gear Solid 4. He decided to leave Kojima Studios after his mother began having health problems so he could be closer to home. Following Metal Gear Solid 4, Payton worked on Halo 4. He eventually decided to branch out on his own in order to create a game he wanted rather than the ones assigned him at Microsoft. It was at this time that Payton began work on Republique in his home state of Washington. During the making of the game, Payton noticed that, quote, "The game started to look like Resident Evil 1. I got excited then because I'm the biggest fan of the 32-bit era, more than any era in the history of games. So the game started off as more of a survival horror. The game, whether we want it to be or not, is a stealth game because we imagined that Hope was trying to escape, and she's trying to avoid conflict as opposed to inviting it." End quote. Payton augmented his team with Brendan Murphy, who wrote the story of Republique. Murphy is most known for his writing and directing of Speakeasy, a movie from 2002. For Payton's cast, he introduced Raina Strober as the voice actor for his protagonist, Hope. She is backed by an all-star cast which includes Jennifer Hale, most known for her work in the Mass Effect series, and David Hayter, popularized by his role as Solid Snake in the Metal Gear Solid series. Hale brings to life Hope's mentor, Mireille Perdue, and Hayter embodies Zager, revolutionary and ghost in the political machine. Payton's last major contributors were the companies who cooperated with him to develop and port Republique. Logan, a content creation and production studio, and Darkwind Media, a game adaptation and developing company, both helped Payton create his game. Unity and Gung Ho helped develop and publish Republique into the different platforms it can be played on today. Republique is nominally a stealth game, originally released on the mobile platform. Payton says that he, quote, decided he was going to stop complaining about the lack of real games on mobile and start making one, end quote. Payton also said he wanted to, quote, bring a hardcore console, PC-friendly experience that's narrative-driven to a wider mobile audience, end quote. Released in a time when the only real game was Infinity Blade, Republique provided a niche gaming environment for its followers, when the market of mobile games for those identifying as hardcore gamers was small. Republique was distributed alongside other semi-stealth games such as Tomb Raider or games with unique dual-character stories like Beyond Two Souls. Republique was received fairly well upon release, with Chapter 1 receiving a 77 Metacritic score. This score was originally for the mobile platform, but the rating remained around that for the console and PC ports. However, popular reception is mixed depending on the platform of the user. PS4 users tend to have a favorable view of the game. On the PC, however, a common criticism is that the game is incomplete due to the amount of time developers spent creating the PS4 version.
Nonetheless, regardless of which platform the player decides to use, the gameplay remains virtually the same. Although mechanics change between platforms of all ported games, the player in Republique toggles between controlling Hope's movements and the technological devices throughout the facility of Metamorphosis, such as cameras, computers, and locks on doors. Throughout Metamorphosis, Hope encounters guards, locked doors, and laser gates. These are just a few of the many obstacles the player must help Hope tackle. Players do so by hacking and interacting with the environment from the cameras scattered within Metamorphosis. Hacking is done by the player by entering the camera mode discussed before, and then pressing and holding R3 on the PlayStation 4. The player can guide Hope to find collectibles by pickpocketing guards and using the battery of her phone to unlock chests, doors, and boxes. Hope cannot run away from these guards, and running in general causes the Pris-Rack to become aware of Hope's location. So she primarily walks quickly or crawls around, squatting while she walks. Throughout the game, some upgrades become available. By selling secrets to a supercomputer called the Data Broker, such as voicemails and emails, which Hope collects by reading the emails after logging onto computers with stolen login information. The player can collect such updates as seeing which paths guards will follow and the choice to distract different guards as the player creeps around. One way Peyton makes hacking and advancing forward difficult is by giving Hope a cell phone in which the player's health is associated. Every time the player decides to unlock a door or a box, Hope's cell phone loses a battery bar, which is equivalent to a health or HP bar in other games. In each area with a prison cell or a data broker screen, marked by a skull and crossbones, there's a tiny glowing box. Here's where the player can heal or charge Hope's cell phone, regaining the used bars of the battery. The guards of Metamorphosis are called Pris-Rack. Their leaders include the three primary antagonists, the Headmaster, Murray, and Derringer. These three are attempting to prevent Hope's escape. One Pris-Rack, named Cooper, is assisting Hope in her liberation. However, he has not yet stated his reasoning for assisting her. Republique presents itself as a distinctly goal-driven game, the goals being to evade the Pris-Rack and escape Metamorphosis. The player is focused on this singular goal, with the events of the game happening in a linear function. However, the most important incidents occur during cutscenes, when the actions are not truly under the control of the player. Littered throughout the narrative are small choices the player can make. For instance, the player is able to decide if he or she should watch a video that will upset Hope or watch it alone. Another such choice is if, to escape, the player wants to frame a few Pris-Rack. However, to do so, the player learns about the Pris-Rack's past, characterizing them before you decide to throw them under the bus or not. In leading Hope through the chamber-style level design of Metamorphosis, Republique blurs the line between the game world and the real world by having Hope directly interact with the player via her cell phone. The player views the entirety of the game from the cameras of Metamorphosis, as though they had actually hacked into the camera network. The line between the game world and the real world is further blurred by collectibles within the game, which will be discussed later. The visual design within Republique is clearly dystopian. The world is a fictional one in which life is generally negative for anyone who denies governmental regulations, and for those who do not gain access to higher positions within that government. Republique uses real-world images to create a connection between the player and the game, to essentially make the player a character just as Hope talking to the camera or screen does. We will discuss this connection further in our video. However, the developers use other elements to create the futuristic setting of Metamorphosis. Statues of famous influential people through time, such as Vladimir Lenin, Plato, and the headmaster himself, Triglav, line the rooms, while regal red and gold banners line the ceiling. Many rooms, such as those near the headmaster's office and the library, are filled with ornate furniture. They have high ceilings draped with regal colors, like those mentioned before. Bright green foliage litters these areas as well, even though these rooms are underground. Contrastly, other rooms around the compound are lit in cold blues and have black and white and silver tiles, representative of a prison. No greenery is seen here. In fact, these rooms seem sterile, as if no life could grow here. The sterile-looking areas contain what we have previously mentioned are called precals, which is what Hope is. They're frigid, lonely areas where the slave-like citizens live. Oppositely, the leaders reside in the ornate, beautiful areas. Here is where we see the characteristics of a dystopian future. Republique contains many artifacts that exist in the real world as well as in the game world. Because Metamorphosis is a totalitarian government, many items, especially these artifacts, are considered contraband. Therefore, censorship becomes a large theme in the game.
Got him. Zager killed in firefight with Prizrak. The depravity of this man was boundless. Best to remove the comments section for the online edition, and change shot dead by Prizrak to killed in firefight by Prizrak. This way it suggests he was given a sporting chance. When the surveillance video of this day surfaces, and it will, it's going to require major surgery if they want it to look like justice.
Hope's friend who introduces her to the teachings of Zager, the librarian Louis Octavo, spreads censored books, all dealing with problematic governments. From socialism to governmental surveillance, the books address the problems of totalitarian-type governments, while also directing attention to such issues as child abuse and adultery. Most of the books, if not all of them, were banned in the real world as well, which shows how the game developers are making a slight commentary on censorship within governments. Some of these books include George Orwell's 1984 and Animal Farm, as well as sensual novels like Vladimir Nabokov's Lolita and Haruki Murakami's Sputnik Suite. The video games the player can collect are not important to the story necessarily, but they are a fun collection that helps the player's before-mentioned friend Cooper. Cooper is a hated member of the Prizrak, and so they constantly torment him. One of the ways they do so is by stealing his games. He asks the player, and Hope, by proximity, to recollect his stolen games. The games are largely indie games such as Gravity Rush, Her Story, and Gone Home.
The real-world artifacts seen in Republique connect the player to the game, and aid in blurring the line between the real world and game world. Furthering this connection is the way Republique names its characters and the world in which it takes place. Many forms of fictional media give their characters and locations meaningful names to allow the consumer a sense of connection to the media. Republique is no exception to this method and uses naming as a tool to enhance storytelling. By giving places and characters meaningful names, either subtly or not, Republique hints at how events in the world will unfold, while the game also creates a sense of anticipation in the player. The first and most relevant name comes from Republique's protagonist, 390H. If reversed, the numerical tag given to the protagonist says Hope in Leetspeak, that is, the practice of using numbers and special characters to represent letters. Although it appears that Hope is initially just a random name given to her by the developers, the concept of Hope becomes increasingly more important as the game progresses, thereby revealing the importance of 390H's real name. Themes emerge throughout the game, such as hope for escape, hope for freedom, hope for hope. However, in Chapter 4, when it appears that Hope has lost her memory, all seems lost. It is unclear whether or not the Hope we see in Chapter 4 is a different clone of the girl or the girl that we've been following for 3 chapters. While it seems like character is still 390H, full of grief from potentially getting her friend Cooper killed by other Prizrak, there's also the possibility that this new personality is a clone of 390H. Later in the game, players learn that Hope descends from a long line of 390 clones. We will expound on the clones within Republique in a moment. However, at this point in time, it is important to know that Hope has been cloned before and that all precals are clones who are part of Treglazov's master plan. In any case, when Chapter 4 begins, Hope's name changes to 390 and she no longer cares to escape. In fact, her entire attitude changes. The voice acting becomes airy and high-pitched, while her demeanor turns from stealthy to oblivious. She is instead focused on avoiding Mammoth, a giant who guards 390's only way out. However, 390 reacts to events in a loud, unreserved manner, much to the dismay of the players. If a group of bees, which are gathered around flowers throughout the garden, swarm her, 390 will cry out loudly, attracting Mammoth to her location. 390 does not understand her present danger at this moment and does not attempt to escape until the player guides her to the correct path. The game diminishes the player's faith in the game by removing many of the previously mentioned abilities, like map usage or the ability to predict enemy movements, which are utilized to help Hope break out of Metamorphosis. Finally, Chapter 4 ends with a climatic event, in which 390 is shot. Chapter 5 begins with the headmaster and Derringer interrogating Hope, renewing the player's confidence that she will survive and escape. As the game continues, following Hope's struggle, so too does the player's belief that a happy ending is in store for the young protagonist. Due to the numerous dystopian stories in which the protagonist finds the light after soul-crushing battles, our fallacy of Hope's future is cemented. Yet at the end of the game, players are faced with a very different reality. Hope, having achieved her goal, throws herself into the ocean in an attempted suicide. The screen fades to black as the phone and with it the player sink to the ocean floor. Hope herself ambiguously floats in the ocean, leaving players unaware if she is saved or left to drown. Yet we believe Hope lives. As the phone falls, bubbles speed up to the surface, proving the phone is falling in water. Also, the last image on the screen before the phone dies is the dome of Metamorphosis deep under the sea. Hope at this point rises, approaching the light of, presumably, the sun. Hope's enigmatic fate, whether or not she is alive, leaves the player hope for a better world intact. But it is not just Hope's name that serves as a physical representation of fate. The name of the nation, Metamorphosis, literally means change. Built into the game's rhetoric is a great deal of butterfly imagery. One challenge in the game comes when Hope finds blueprints for a key to the surface. The key's handle is one half of a butterfly's wings. Butterflies are also seen around the compound, flying in the foliage or even as the email login screen. This imagery suggests that Treglazov's government is trying to create something beautiful. The unstated meaning in this imagery is that before a caterpillar becomes a butterfly, it must degrade and rebuild itself inside a chrysalis. This implication is not much different from other stories of villains who wish to destroy and remake the world in their own way, attempting to create beauty, such as Sephiroth from Final Fantasy, Lysander from Pokemon, or Sargeras from Warcraft. The Republique never states renewal as the goal of the headmaster. His disdain for certain books, games, and modern artifacts solidifies his desire to change certain aspects of the world. His way of doing so is Metamorphosis. The main data server of Metamorphosis appears to build off the idea of change. Named Terminus, meaning end, the server has a cryptic title and that instills a sense of finality within the underground government. Terminus is the culmination of the desire for change. Since the nation of Metamorphosis was seemingly constructed around Terminus, the super server also elicits an end of Treglazov's changes within the nation. Evidence becomes clear when Treglazov reveals his ultimate goal to be one of data collection, with Terminus being capable of collecting the entirety of human knowledge. He goes so far as to encode historical data into the genetics of human clones, known as precals.
The theoretical state of DNA is that you could store the total world information, which is 120 petabytes, at least in 2011, in about 4 times the DNA.
Treglazov does so in order to become the most powerful ruler on Earth. With the entirety of human knowledge in one clone, Treglazov would be able to pick and choose which humans he wanted to survive and those he didn't. He would not need a majority of the human race any longer, disposing of many, much like historical rulers who administered holocausts. Treglazov's final goal was a change, yes, but it was also a mass execution. While the player does not have complete control over the events in the game, Republique allows players to feel as though they have a choice in what happens within the dystopian world. Republique pushes players towards shaping changes that they desire, such as freedom of speech and freedom to think without governmental intervention, while also reminding them to be mindful of harmful changes. Finally, we explain the game's title and the title of the manifesto that drives Metamorphosis, Republique. Republique is the French derivative of the Latin res publica, literally meaning public stuff. An interesting contradiction is produced by the difference in meaning between the literal word and the game's idea as to what a republic consists of. Since power lies in the hands of many within a traditional republic, yet in Republique, power lies in the hands of one man, Kenichiro Treglazov. Why then does the game's title remain Republique? The contradiction between a true republic and Peyton's world is ever present in the game. Every time the Republique Manifesto is mentioned, we are reminded that Metamorphosis is not really a republic, but rather a dictatorship. By constantly reminding players of the dissonance between what is commonly referred to as a republic and what the game calls a republic, players experience a great deal of frustration. While the leaders of Metamorphosis claim they are for the people, they oppress those within their control through censorship, violent acts, and what is known as recalibration. The player helps one of the oppressed, and in doing so, feels the persecution of the common people within Metamorphosis as if it was his or her own predicament. The frustration experienced by the player instills a passion against the ones using the idea of a republic put forth by its literal translation incorrectly, namely Treglazov. The anger motivates the player to push hope to the end of the game with the desire to see Treglazov get his just desserts. Treglazov's lack of understanding is finally brought to the forefront when his American partner, Vice Admiral Matthews, sees hope and understands that Treglazov's intentions are not as simple as data collection. Republique's usage of names and titles, while sometimes a bit obvious, enhances the way players interact with the game, either by feeling a greater connection to Hope and therefore being more invested in helping her achieve her goal, or by seeing the connections to the real world through the banned books and through motivation against the ideals of Treglazov. This enhancement leads to a sense of urgency and connection with the characters on the side of the player. Republique leaves players invested in the game world, which because of the core mechanics of the game extends to the real world. The construction of Metamorphosis as an authoritarian regime that is willing to perform unethical human experiments and censor books, if the player is invested in the world and the characters, becomes real and instills the sense that this is not a world people want to live in.